Apocalypse of John is one of the most enigmatic and fascinating texts in history. Imagine a vision that spans centuries, generating heated debates and varied interpretations. What did John really see on that deserted island? And what if I told you that the images he describes still resonate with the anxieties of our current society? Throughout history, each generation has read the Apocalypse in light of its own fears. Have you ever thought about how wars, natural disasters, and social crises have shaped these interpretations? And what about the theories that emerge and multiply, as if they were prophecies in a cosmic chess game? With each page, a new layer of meaning is revealed, challenging our understanding of time and eternity. What do these visions have to teach us about the present? How much of the future is hidden between the lines? Prepare to dive into this journey of discoveries, where every answer can open doors to new questions. The Apocalypse is not just an end, but an invitation to deep reflection on the human condition. Join me in this exploration that promises to surprise. The first century, a vibrant and turbulent period, isn't it? When we think about the context in which the first Christian communities emerged, we quickly encounter a complex socio-economic and religious environment. Christians were often in a state of persecution, and it's not hard to understand why. The Christian faith was emerging amid a Roman Empire that valued the worship of the emperor and the plurality of gods, leaving little room for a new movement that preached the exclusivity of a single god. It was truly a minefield. The influence of Judaism was evident, as many of the early Christians were Jewish. Traditions, festivals, and Hebrew scriptures shaped not only the religion, but also the cultural identity of these groups. On the other hand, Hellenistic culture brought a series of ideas and philosophies that challenged and influenced how Christianity organized and communicated. Conversations about ethics, morality, and the nature of the divine gained new dimensions in this cultural melting pot. Thus, Christianity not only consolidated itself, but also adapted and responded to the challenges of its time. And we cannot forget the social and economic tensions. Social classes were well defined. There were the rich, who were often oppressors, and the poor, who frequently lived on the margins, struggling for a bit of dignity and survival. In this scenario, the message of hope and liberation that Christianity brought was like a balm for weary souls. The appeal for equality and social justice deeply resonated, especially among the marginalized. Thus, the Christian faith began to establish itself as a refuge and a promise of a new tomorrow. Moreover, religion was not an isolated issue. Religious syncretism was on the rise, and Christian communities were surrounded by a variety of cults and beliefs competing for followers. This posed unique challenges for evangelism and for maintaining faith. The need to distinguish themselves amid so many voices and claims became a crucial issue for Christian identity. It was a constant struggle between preserving faith and adapting to the realities of the surrounding world. Finally, the persecution of Christians, which intensified throughout the century, forced communities to unite around a common identity and a narrative that resonated with their experiences. The idea of a Messiah who suffered and conquered death became a powerful symbol of resistance and hope. This narrative shaped Christian theology and practice, creating an unbreakable bond between faith and the struggle for survival in a hostile world. Speaking of narratives, we cannot overlook how theological interpretations of the Apocalypse have varied throughout history. Have you ever considered that the way people understand this complex text can change depending on the time and place in which they live? Preterism, for example, leads us to believe that the prophecies of the Apocalypse refer to events that have already occurred, particularly in the context of the Roman Empire. This view can bring a sense of closure, as if everything has already come to pass, inviting us to look at history as a source of learning. On the other hand, we have futurism, which focuses on prophecies yet to come. This approach generates a constant expectation, almost a collective anxiety, regarding what lies ahead. For many, this perspective translates into a desire to prepare for the end times, which can be both motivating and terrifying. It is interesting to note how this can affect people's actions and beliefs, leading to a search for signs and interpretations that promise to unveil the future. In contrast, historicism adopts a broader view, seeing the apocalypse as a reflection of events that shaped the history of the church and the world. This interpretation allows for a deeper connection between sacred texts and the happenings of everyday life. By looking to the past, we can find parallels and better understand the ongoing struggle between good and evil. It is almost as if the apocalypse is a lens through which we can observe the evolution of humanity. There is also idealism, which takes us to a more metaphysical level. This approach focuses not on historical events, but on the underlying spiritual realities. For idealists, the apocalypse is less about concrete predictions and more about universal and timeless truths that speak to the human condition. This interpretation can offer comfort and hope, as it encourages us to seek meaning and truth, rather than getting lost in details about specific future events. These different interpretations shape not only theology, but also the practice and experience of the Christian faith. Each of them offers a unique perspective that can enrich or complicate the understanding of the apocalypse. Thus, the way we approach this sacred text is not merely a matter of exegesis, but also of how we position ourselves in the world and how we respond to the fundamental questions of life and death. And how about we talk about the symbols and the images that John used in his visions? That is fascinating. The apocalypse is filled with powerful and evocative figures. The beasts, for example, are one of the most impactful images. They symbolize not only evil, but also oppressive systems and forces that oppose the message of Christ. Throughout the centuries, these beasts have gained various interpretations, from historical figures to more abstract representations of evil. Each era seems to find new meaning in this symbol, reflecting the anxieties and fears of its time. The seals and the trumpets are also intriguing, don't you think? The opening of the seals reveals developments that affect both heaven and earth. Each seal broken brings forth a new revelation, a new layer of reality. The trumpets, in turn, serve as calls to action, alerting us to events that will change the course of history. These images are powerful because they speak on a visceral level. They connect us with our deepest emotions and make us reflect on the consequences of our actions. Apocalyptic symbolism is not limited to images of destruction. There is also a strong presence of hope and renewal. The New Jerusalem, with its vivid descriptions of beauty and peace, is a testament that, even amid chaos, there is a promise of restoration. This duality between terror and hope is what makes the text so powerful. It challenges us to confront what we fear, but also offers us a vision of a glorious future. This symbolic richness has led to a multitude of interpretations throughout history. Theologians, artists, and writers have engaged deeply with these images, each bringing their own light to the text. From the Middle Ages to the present day, artistic representations of the apocalypse reflect the human struggle against evil and the quest for redemption. Each generation seems to find new meanings and new ways to express what these images evoke. Therefore, the symbolism in the apocalypse is a continuous dialogue between the text and the reader. Each of us brings our experiences, fears, and hopes when approaching these images. What may have been a symbol of oppression for one generation can become a call to resistance for another. This flexibility of interpretation is what makes the apocalypse so relevant, regardless of the era in which we live. It is an invitation to reflect on what it means to be human in a world full of challenges and uncertainties. The apocalyptic movements. They have always fascinated me. The idea that the world, in its entirety, may be on the brink of collapse, or that a savior is about to return, is something that has captured the human imagination for centuries. From the early Christians, who lived under the oppression of the Roman Empire and awaited the second coming of Christ, to modern times, This expectation of an imminent end has generated a series of religious movements. It is as if the message of the apocalypse has found a deep echo in the human soul, fueling hopes and often fears. It seems that John's work, with its vivid images and promises of redemption, has served as fuel for many sects. Some of them, like the Montanists in the 2nd century, believed that the end was near and that soon the faithful would be taken to heaven. This idea of a triumphant return of Christ not only galvanized followers, but also provoked adverse reactions from ecclesiastical authorities, who viewed these beliefs as threats to established orthodoxy. It is interesting to think about how each of these groups appropriated the apocalypse, shaping their beliefs and practices around that expectation of a final judgment. Over the centuries, this phenomenon has repeated itself. In the 19th century, for example, the Adventist movement emerged, centered on the idea that the return of Christ was imminent. And who can forget the role that Jehovah's Witnesses played in relation to the apocalypse? They not only adopted, but also reinterpreted its messages, announcing specific dates for events that, according to them, indicated the end times. This incessant search for signs and prophecies reminds us that, in times of uncertainty, people cling to anything that might offer a glimpse of hope. We cannot overlook the impact of popular culture in this scenario. Movies, books, and even music have explored this theme, bringing to light the idea that the apocalypse is not just an ancient narrative, but a reality that could manifest at any moment. Contemporary religious movements, such as those that emerged after significant events like September 11th or the COVID-19 pandemic, often use apocalyptic language to legitimize their beliefs and mobilize followers. This resilience of the apocalyptic narrative is undoubtedly a testament to its relevance. Finally, looking at these movements and sects, it becomes clear that the apocalypse is not just a religious text, but a cultural phenomenon that resonates in different historical contexts. The hope and fear of the end times continue to shape not only religious beliefs, but also the societies in which we live. And who can predict what the future holds? What we know is that as long as there are uncertainties, there will be those who turn to the pages of the apocalypse in search of answers. When I think about the impact of the apocalypse of John on the arts, it feels like an entire world opens up before me. The richness of its images and symbolism has influenced artists, writers, and composers throughout the centuries. From the grim visions of Hieronymus Bosch to the literary works of John Milton, the apocalypse has provided a vibrant palette of themes that explore the duality between good and evil, redemption and condemnation. Each artist, each author, brought their own interpretation, resulting in a complex tapestry that reflects the human struggle in the face of the unknown. Bosch, for example, is known for his paintings filled with symbolism and surrealism. In the Garden of Earthly Delights, he captures the essence of sin and decay, echoing the apocalyptic message of judgment and destruction. His work is not merely a representation of the world, but a warning about the consequences of human actions. The use of surrealism and symbolism in his works invites the viewer to explore the depths of the human psyche, reflecting the anxiety that many feel about the end times. John Milton, on the other hand, in his work Paradise Lost, does not merely narrate the fall of man, but also brings to light the struggle between divine and demonic forces. Milton's text resonates with apocalyptic themes by questioning what it means to be human in a world filled with challenges and temptations. For him, the fall is not just an isolated event, but a continuous process culminating in a cosmic battle for humanity's fate. This vision resonated deeply in his time and continues to influence contemporary writers. In addition to painting and literature, music has also been influenced by the apocalypse. Composers like Gustav Mahler and Leonard Bernstein explored apocalyptic themes in their symphonies and pieces, incorporating the idea of a cataclysmic end that in some way also brings the promise of renewal. The music not only captures the anxiety of the end, but also offers a vision of hope amidst chaos. When we listen to these compositions, we are transported to a space where the sacred and the profane intertwine, reflecting the complexity of the human experience. Ultimately, art, literature, and music are powerful vehicles that make the themes of the apocalypse accessible and relevant. Throughout the centuries, these artistic interpretations have served as a way to engage with humanity's anxieties and hopes. If there is one thing that works influenced by the apocalypse teach us, it is that even in the midst of despair, human creativity is capable of giving voice to what often remains unarticulated. The apocalyptic images and narratives invite us to reflect on the state of the world and our place in it, becoming an inexhaustible source of inspiration and contemplation. Thus, the apocalypse, in its various forms, remains a perennial theme. The works that emerge from it not only reinterpret its central themes, but also offer a new lens through which we can examine contemporary realities. It's as if, when looking at the past, these works provide us with clues on how to tackle the challenges of the present and the future. After all, in a constantly changing world, questions about the end and what comes after remain as relevant as they have ever been. And when I look at contemporary issues, I cannot help but notice how interpretations of the apocalypse still play a vital role in our discourse. In times of crisis, be they political, social, or environmental, many turn to apocalyptic texts in search of meaning and answers. It's fascinating how a narrative written centuries ago can still resonate so powerfully amid the uncertainties of the modern world. It's almost as if these visions of catastrophe and renewal prepare us for what is yet to come. A clear example is the rise of religious extremism and how it often feeds off apocalyptic interpretations. Groups that anticipate divine intervention or the coming of a Messiah frequently lean on passages from the apocalypse to justify their actions. The language of the end times finds fertile ground amidst social and political crises, leading many to believe we are living in an era of signs. This search for deeper meaning amid chaos has been a constant in our human behavior. Moreover, environmental issues also have a strong connection to the apocalypse. Concerns about climate change and its disastrous consequences for the planet often evoke apocalyptic imagery. The discourse about the end of the world is not merely hyperbole, it reflects on the choices we make as a society. This connection between apocalyptic narrative and the contemporary struggle for sustainability proves that the stories we tell about ourselves shape our actions and decisions. In politics, apocalyptic rhetoric has also become a powerful tool. Leaders who invoke the end times or the final battle often appeal to the emotions of their followers, creating a sense of urgency that can result in mobilization or, in some cases, division. It's a strategy that, while effective, can have devastating consequences, leading to conflicts and polarizations that threaten social cohesion. Thus, the influence of the apocalypse extends beyond the religious sphere, permeating all aspects of contemporary life. Ultimately, the relevance of the apocalypse in today's society cannot be underestimated. In a world filled with uncertainties, narratives about the end times continue to offer solace, hope, and, in some cases, even warnings. The search for meaning in the face of the unknown is a constant in the human experience, and the apocalypse presents itself as a lens through which we can explore these questions. In the end, contemporary interpretations of the apocalypse not only reflect our anxieties. When I look at the world today, I cannot help but notice how interpretations of the apocalypse are still present in the most heated discussions about religion, politics, and ethics. It's almost as if that ancient text, written amid persecution and uncertainty, has found new life in the crises we face. For many, the apocalypse is more than mere prophecy. It is a guide on how to deal with the adversities and fears that surround us. And honestly, that makes perfect sense when we consider the instability of our time. In a scenario where fake news proliferates and truth seems to be a concept in decline, Apocalyptic interpretations are often used to justify actions and worldviews. It is not uncommon to see religious and political leaders referencing the images and prophecies of John to support their narratives. After all, there are many who believe we are living in the last days, generating a sense of urgency that can be both mobilizing and paralyzing. Thus, the apocalypse becomes a tool that can be manipulated to serve different agendas, reflecting the complexity of the human condition. Additionally, there is a growing concern about ethical issues that emerge in times of crisis, and this is where the apocalypse also gains relevance. The way we deal with the pandemic, the climate crisis, and social inequalities can be viewed through the lens of warnings and promises contained in the apocalyptic text. Many wonder, how should we act in a world that seems on the brink of collapse? For some, the answer is simple. We should return to spiritual roots and prepare for the coming of the kingdom. For others, the answer involves a more practical and immediate action, seeking justice and equity here and now. In recent decades, the appeal of the apocalypse has also manifested in social movements, where the idea of an end of times is not just a matter of belief, but a call to action. Groups fighting for civil rights, social and environmental justice often employ apocalyptic language to describe their struggles. They see the need for radical transformation as preparation for a new world that must emerge, and this undoubtedly resonates with the hopes and fears many have regarding the future. What was once a religious concern now becomes a matter of collective survival. And so, we must consider how art and media also engage with these contemporary issues. Films, series, and books frequently incorporate apocalyptic themes, reflecting society's current unease. The popularity of stories featuring end-of-the-world scenarios is no mere coincidence. They allow us to explore our deepest fears and yearnings for a better future. This cultural phenomenon is undoubtedly an extension of the apocalyptic narrative, showing that even in forms of entertainment, the resonance of the apocalypse is undeniable. As a man living in this context, I cannot help but reflect on what all of this means for me and those around me. In a time of uncertainty, it is somewhat comforting to think that there is a greater purpose amidst the chaos. However, I also see the danger in using these narratives to justify actions that may be harmful. The apocalypse, while offering hope, can also become an instrument of social control and manipulation. Therefore, the responsibility to interpret these texts wisely and ethically is more crucial than ever.